You must have heard this at least once from that one tech guy in your group to say, modern smartphones are so boring now, man. 2017 to 2019 were the best years of smartphone innovation. Smartphones made at those times were the best. And to be fair, it is kind of true though, but also not exactly. Now you see, there are 5 basic principles of making a smartphone. Number 1, the design. Number 2, the display. Number 3, the battery. Number 4, the cameras. And of course, number 5, the performance, which does includes both software and hardware upgrades. Now back in like 2016 or 2017, most smartphone brands were trying their best to be a strong contender in this overcrowded smartphone market. Everybody wanted to prove to the customers that they can be better than the competition, and so almost every year we got to see a new technological leap in the smartphone world, as there were so many things that needed a fix, like say full metal body phones or glass and metal body smartphones to stand out from the crowd, or even big batteries with fastest charging to solve battery life issues. Like I still remember when OnePlus's dash charge was the fastest charging technology in the smartphone world, and everybody wanted that. Then came those amazing OLED displays, which were a premium thing for a really long time and also looked more stunning than a normal IPS or TFT displays, which were very common back in those days. So if a budget smartphone had that, people got blown away, and also those faster refresh rate just made things a lot better. Then the cameras, which started to be a one singular camera, but then Apple showed in their iPhone 7 Plus model that you know what, smartphone cameras can have those cool bokeh photos like those DSLR cameras by adding just one more lens, or maybe with software. And of course, who can forget those variable aperture on the Samsung S9 Plus, then those 108 megapixel camera or even 200 megapixel camera sensor upgrades, 100 times zoom lens, and the list just can go on and on. And obviously those beloved pop-up cameras, which not only looked cool but also gave us the near to full screen display experience. You also got those phones by either Vivo or Xiaomi, which had a display all around the phone with basically zero physical buttons. Then the hardware improvements were also a big step ahead. We went from like using a 28 nanometer fabrication process in a processor to a way smaller 10 nanometer fabrication process, even for processor used in a budget centric smartphone. Then we started getting more RAM and storage than ever. Like we went from barely having a gigabyte of RAM and 8 GB of storage to a minimum of 6 to 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage with much faster speeds on both. And also the Android software also started to get more refined with more and regular software updates coming, which usually brought in big changes every time, and iOS started to get more friendly. And this list can go on and on, but you get it right. There were upgrades, rather bigger upgrades on almost every aspect of a smartphone, doesn't matter a budget one or a flagship killer or an actual flagship. Now I know headphone jacks and SD card slots were also removed around this time, mainly for a so-called better water protection and weight management and so on, but mostly it was upgrades, right? And that started to make people excited about what could be the next big thing. But after like 2019, it just felt like everything started to move rather slowly, and after like 2022, everything started to feel stagnant. But why? Well, designs felt rather the same almost every year, mainly on the more premium smartphones. AMOLED or rather curved AMOLED displays were almost on every other smartphones, even in the budget ones now, rather than just a premium feature, with no more pop-up cameras and rather a small yet a punch hole camera or an island on the display, with 120Hz refresh rate on almost all phones now. Camera improvements were now mainly software based and rather than an actual hardware change. Bigger batteries were on all smartphones basically, with faster charging everywhere to be seen, and processor upgrades just got like 10% powerful from the last one, so not a huge difference was to be seen. And software upgrades also started to look identical across all smartphones, doesn't matter which brand you used. So yeah, nothing different or exciting to expect from the next software upgrades. And yeah, these were some of the reasons of why people started to think that smartphone innovation was basically dead. But what if I tell you, you are not seeing the bigger picture here? Yes, smartphone designs, especially on the premium smartphones, all started to look the same. Like every generational design upgrades were very minimal compared to the predecessor, but again it made those phones more recognizable in the public, and almost all same designs made that companies had to spend much less time and money on a new design. Even though the prices of these smartphones are still skyrocketing, but it could have been worse that way, I guess. And also all of these pop-up cameras or all-screen body smartphones were mostly conceptual rather practical, as it was more prone to getting damaged and also would make repairability much more costly, even though I do want those pop-up cameras to make a comeback. But yes, can companies stop using plastic frames or more expensive phones, please? Also, everybody could now get almost the same premium display experience even under a budget. Yes, that did came with a cost, but mostly it was a positive impact, be it in terms of the display tech or the display protection, or even in terms of brightness. Cameras become less dependent on hardware changes and more on its processing, which is a more important thing rather than getting more megapixels every year. Also, how can you not see that even zoom lenses have now become a more budget friendly thing? So getting a good natural portrait has become more easier and a budget friendly thing than ever. Back in 2019, if you needed a good PUBG or BGMI experience, you had to spend around 30,000 rupees for a good phone with a good processor. But now the processor has gone so powerful and stable that even a 20,000 rupees phone can give you an almost smooth BGMI experience with also an overall smooth software experience, which now focuses on more smoother experience upgrade rather than a more cool looking upgrade. And yes, batteries are now bigger than ever on almost all smartphones, smartphones, and new tech like using silicon, which basically makes the battery capacity bigger even without needing to change the actual physical size of it. And fast charging is now for everyone. Yes, apart from the premium users. Yeah, don't worry, you will get that soon in like the next 10 years, I guess. What I mean to say is that the reason we feel that we are in a sort of a stagnant growth in smartphone world is mainly because we are already at a point where we have already done like 70 to 80% upgrades that were needed on a smartphone. Like apart from the design perspective, be it in terms of display or cameras or performance or battery or even overall software experience, most smartphones are performing way too good in these categories. That it just makes you feel like it's boring because most of the actual improvements is already done. Only incremental upgrades like AI or software enhancements are still under the works. So yeah, these are the main upgrades we have been seeing for the past 2-3 years or so, and maybe even in the future. Now I'm not saying that all of these upgrades were good and positive. Some of them actually created more problems than ever, but companies are trying to fix them. Well, most of them are, and yes, smartphone pricing and even the parts pricing has also increased, but mostly this stagnant growth in smartphone world is actually kind of good for most of us in most of the ways at least. So yeah, stop holding on to the past and rather be excited for the present or maybe the future. And so make sure to watch these videos too, and as always, me was Rideep, you subscribe and like. Okay, bye for now.